Quotations from myself, segment 83, quotation number 993. Government, if judged by the typical behavior of the rank and file of its first line of defense, the governmental bureaucracy could be compared to the casino slot machine, programmed to give 1,000 of negative responses to every positive one. As a solitary citizen, like a gambler in a casino, not only has to feed it with countless quarters of requests and supplications, but has also just about as many chances to win it, that is, to get from the government officials what he is asking for. Now, to be fair, the majority of the people one encounters in life react not that differently when asked about some favors. And if it costs them next to nothing to grant, even if it costs them next to nothing to grant it, whenever they feel to be in a position to give or not, their first almost automatic response is also typically negative. And usually it is a sense of some moral obligations or fear of being perceived as unfriendly and unsociable, and not the natural inclination to give that forces them to satisfy, at least partially, the solicitation by the others. And because almost everybody behaves in such a manner, it is widely accepted and considered to be normal not to take an anticipated no for an answer, but to ask for what one wants again and again. And there are very few people, regardless of their social position, who feel that such begging is below their dignity. Looking for an explanation of such a universal phenomenon, it will help perhaps to remember that even a king was once a child, and as such has to ask his parents or guardians for a permission to do, or to have this or that. And being undoubtedly denied at least some of his wishes, had to, in rather undignified for the future king manner, be persistent in his request, which is a begging by other more respectable name. And if the king has to do, and probably still occasionally does it, so much so is the rest of us, who, like him, were accustomed through childhood and adolescence to be persistent to get what we want. And growing up in this respect hasn't changed a thing. For in most life situations, most of us are still in the position of a child who has to depend on the whims of those with power for the satisfaction of his needs and wants. 994. The main problem with ever-increasing productivity, this golden cup of modernity, which simply means that the fewer people can produce now as much or even more than the larger number could have done before, is that the people who are made redundant by this process are not going anywhere, and at least in industrial welfare state, still have to be taken care of, that is, to be fed, housed, educated, treated with medical ailments, etc. Furthermore, such a constant increase in productivity, combined with the rapid growth of population, brings about a kind of reverse Malthusianism, when the shortage of work and not the scarcity of food, at least not yet, is quickly becoming the principal plague of our times, with a psychological starvation for a meaningful life, replacing more and more physical hunger as a leading cause of human suffering and misery. 995. What the old are craving most of all for, and what at the end of the day is their only real satisfaction, after being gradually denied them by irresistibly failing bodies, is the acknowledgement by the young that the old age brings with it a special knowledge and wisdom, which youth is simply incapable of yet. And this acknowledgement, and hopefully the accompanied respect, provides some kind of compensation for everything else that used to make life worth living when I was younger, when one was younger. Consequently, few things make the old people angrier than the denial by the young that the long life has any advantage over the short one in terms of knowing what is right or wrong, good or bad, beautiful or ugly, moral or immoral, etc., etc. And that the opinions of the one just beginning to live are as valid as the one whose life is drawing to the end. For it makes one feel as if one's life has been largely wasted, that nothing of the true value has been gained, and that after all these years of struggle and suffering, one is as innocent of worldly wisdom as a babe unborn, and nothing could be as devastating to the old as this. 996. One who has suffered both objectively and subjectively a lot as a child from the inherent in this stage of life powerlessness, and as a result has developed as a primary motivation for all his subsequent actions the need to avoid at all cost, however, being put in a similarly humiliating position again, usually comes to believe that what separates men from boys or women from girls is finally acquiring the power over other men or women. For without it, such a person never feels fully grown up. It is not surprising then that having equated the adulthood with power, these people begin literally to measure the degree of it by the number of their subordinates, like an army officer who, having 1,000 men under his command, feels to be more of an adult than one who has only 100, and less than one who had 10,000. The same attitude could be observed among the teachers, business managers, politicians, or any other in similar position, when one is telling to the others what to do instead of being told what to do by the others. Yet, despite the enormous power some of these people sometimes possess, because their particular sense of adulthood depends on the willingness of others to obey it, and not in the inner certainty, they are never completely sure of it, and consequently view any act of insubordination on the part of those in their charge, and sometimes even of who are not, as not being taken seriously, treated as a child. But since that's what they are most ardently trying to escape, their anger with and even hate of such a rebel would be boundless, and they will usually use all means at their disposal to subdue or destroy their present reminder of their previously inferior position of powerlessness. 997. No matter how old we are, the wise, by their superior knowledge and insight, make us feel again as children. Yet everyone responds to such a sudden regression differently. The reaction and corresponding liking or disliking of the wise for causing this involuntary, albeit temporary transformation depends largely on one personal experience as a child. Thus, not surprisingly, those who have fond memories of their childhood, undoubtedly as a result of being brought up by loving and caring parents, are actually glad to relieve it, if only for a moment, by letting the wise to play a role of a benevolent parent and themselves of a loved and cared for child. Especially considering that the adult life seldom, if ever, affords us the realization of such a fantasy. But those who remember their childhood as a time of being abused and neglected spend the rest of their lives trying to forget it. Unfortunately, they could become sometimes so paranoid about it that any thoughtful remark or opinion expressed by others would reawaken the bad memories. Consequently, they often tend to perceive and interpret, however unmistakably, someone else's wisdom as an attempt to reduce them again to the miserable state of powerless child, and thus transfer the anger and hate they had previously felt toward the tyrannical parent onto such a wise person, no matter how innocent of this sinister intention he or she would actually be. And although many will ostensibly profess delight in finally finding in a wise person the real parent they always wanted to have, this is at best a self-delusion. For beneath the sin's veneer of acceptance and gratitude lies a never-resolved resentment and bitterness toward the one who treats you as a child. It could be especially unsettling to someone having the power over many, for the one who had achieved such a position quite often has done it to overcome the sense of powerlessness he had suffered from as a child. And suddenly the thoughtful and witty comment made by another man brings home, at least in his paranoid imagination, the fact that in comparison to some men he is still a child, and therefore nothing has changed, and all his life and efforts were in vain. And for that he wants to destroy this wise man, and given the opportunity, often does. 998. Yet another good thing, not too many, so none should be dismissed, about growing old. Fewer and fewer people resent less and less you being wiser than they are, attributing this to the old age, the state they will surely reach someday, rather than to you being smarter, a kind of permanent, hopelessly unbridgeable gap.